We like to believe that evolution always rewards progress. Nature, after all, seems like a master engineer, constantly refining life, making it faster, smarter, stronger. The lion is sleeker than the saber-tooth. The eagle sees farther than any prehistoric reptile. We imagine a straight line of improvement leading from the primitive past to the perfection of the present. But that comforting idea is wrong. Evolution is not a ladder. It is a branching forest where most paths end abruptly. For every species that succeeded, thousands were experiments that failed. They were magnificent, terrifying, sometimes beautiful, but they went nowhere. Their genes hit a wall, their brilliance turned to burden, and their dynasty vanished. This is the story of those creatures, the evolutionary dead ends that terrified their worlds but left no descendants. The monsters that show us evolution's dark sense of humor and its indifference to perfection. To understand these lost titans, we have to step back into worlds almost unrecognizable to us. Picture Earth hundreds of millions of years ago. Continents were fused into giant superlands like Pangaea and Gondwana. Oxygen levels soared and plummeted. Oceans turned green with algae blooms the size of nations. There were no flowers, no birds, no mammals. The air smelled of iron and salt and rot. Every few million years, the planet reinvented itself. Forests of tree ferns gave way to deserts of red dust. Seas evaporated and returned. Volcanoes painted the skies orange for centuries at a time. Each new world forced evolution to start over, sculpting life from the ruins of the last attempt. In these volatile laboratories, strange lineages rose like fever dreams. Some would dominate for a geological blink. Others barely lasted longer than a human empire. And all of them were gambles, bets placed by nature that the environment would stay stable long enough for brilliance to become legacy. Most lost that bet. When we picture prehistoric life, we usually imagine progress as inevitable. Fish crawl onto land, reptiles become dinosaurs evolve into birds, and mammals rise to rule. It feels like a march toward intelligence, warmth, and adaptability. The winners seem obvious. But for much of Earth's history, the dominant survivors were not the clever or the warm-blooded. They were specialists, creatures so perfectly tuned to their environment that a single change could shatter them. Evolution, at its core, rewards the good enough, not the best. And sometimes, being too perfect for one moment in time is the surest way to vanish in the next. So before we meet the monsters, remember this. Each of them once ruled absolutely. They were not doomed from the start. They thrived until the world blinked, and their design no longer fit the rules of the game. Our first descent into the evolutionary graveyard begins in the Devonian period, around 400 million years ago. The oceans were warm, shallow, and filled with armored giants. Among them prowled a creature that seemed unstoppable, the Dunkleosteus. Imagine a fish the size of a school bus, its head encased in bone plates like a tank turret. Instead of teeth, it had guillotine-like jaws that could slice through armor in a single snap. Its bite force was greater than a crocodile's, its speed shocking for its bulk. Everything about it screamed apex. Yet Dunkleosteus represents one of evolution's cruelest jokes. Its power was real but fragile. It relied on an ecosystem of armored prey, other placoderms, that disappeared when global oxygen levels dropped. The Dunkleosteus could not pivot. Its body was too specialized, too heavy, its reproduction too slow. Within a few million years, this terror vanished completely. Not a single modern fish descends from its line. It was evolution's first great superpredator, and its first spectacular failure. But Dunkleosteus was only the opening act. If the Devonian seas were a showcase of armor, the Carboniferous swamps that followed were a cathedral of monsters. Gigantic dragonflies with wings the size of hawks, millipedes longer than a man, amphibians shaped like crocodiles that hunted in pitch-black bogs. Oxygen levels were so high that insects grew enormous, their bodies practically fueled by the air itself. For millions of years, these arthropods dominated, but their size was a chemical illusion. When the atmosphere changed, when oxygen dropped just a little, their internal systems collapsed. Lungs built for a world of plenty could not breathe in scarcity. Within a geological instant, the giants of the Carboniferous suffocated. The same fate awaited the Dimetrodon, a later predator from the Permian era. It looked like a reptilian sailboat with a massive fin rising from its back. That sail was its pride and its curse. It allowed Dimetrodon to warm quickly in the morning sun, outpacing sluggish rivals. But it also made it dependent on stable temperatures. When climate chaos arrived, its thermal advantage turned lethal. Nature had filled the Permian with experiments, sailbacks, giant amphibians, scorpion-like hunters. All of them were evolutionary gambles on a world that refused to stay still. And then came the catastrophe that ended almost everything. The Permian extinction was the greatest mass death in Earth's history. Over 90% of species vanished. For years, scientists searched for the assassin, asteroid, pandemic, cosmic ray, until the evidence pointed to something far more insidious. The killer was Earth itself. Volcanoes in what is now Siberia erupted for 2 million years straight, releasing oceans of lava and enough carbon dioxide to smother the planet. Temperatures soared. Rain turned acid, the seas became toxic brine, oxygen plummeted. Every brilliant adaptation that had once ensured survival, armored skin, giant lungs, solar sails, became irrelevant. The final boss of evolution was not a predator, but the environment. No claw could scratch it, no fang could bite it. Even the mighty Gorgonopsid, a saber-toothed proto-mammal with jaws built for domination, fell before this invisible foe. Its prey vanished, its lungs burned, its eggs cooked. Evolution had backed itself into a corner. The only survivors were the small, the humble, and the lucky, creatures that could hide, burrow, and wait. The lesson was brutal but clear. Nature's ultimate enemy is change itself. From the ashes of that apocalypse, new experiments rose. Reptiles evolved into dinosaurs. Mammals scurried through the undergrowth. The world rebuilt itself. Yet evolution never stopped gambling, and its losers continued to pile up. Consider the marine reptiles that came next. Ichthyosaurs looked like sharks, yet they were reptiles, perfectly shaped for a specific ocean chemistry. When the seas cooled and currents shifted, their sleek perfection became an anchor, gone. Later, the massive pterosaurs that ruled the skies reached absurd wingspans, 30-foot sails of fragile bone. They pushed aerodynamics to the edge, but when flowering plants changed insect populations, their food chains buckled. The air, once theirs, belonged to birds. The same pattern repeated across time. The terror birds of South America, apex hunters of the post-dinosaur world, were outmaneuvered by smaller, smarter mammals. The saber-toothed cats of the Ice Age, masters of ambush and muscle, starved when the megafauna disappeared. Even our own ancestors nearly joined the list. Countless hominid cousins that split, thrived briefly, and ended with no descendants. Evolution keeps no favorites. It rewards the adaptable, punishes the perfect. The creatures that conquered their world became prisoners of it. And so we return to the thesis. Progress is not guaranteed. Evolution is not a march forward, but a maze of locked doors. Every monster we have met was once the peak of design. Each became a monument to the danger of perfection. If you could stand on a cliff and watch 4 billion years unfold, you would see a carousel of worlds, oceans boiling, continents drifting, forests rising and burning. You would see genius appear and vanish, jaws that could crush bone, wings that could span a canyon, sails that could drink the Sunday. You would see every one of them fade into dust, while the small, the unremarkable, the overlooked continued on. That is the real story of life on Earth. The scariest evolutionary dead ends are not monsters from nightmares, but warnings written in stone that dominance is temporary, that brilliance can be fatal, and that survival belongs to the flexible, not the flawless. Today, when we look at our own species, so widespread, so confident, it is worth remembering that we too are just another branch on that vast, tangled tree. The path beneath us is littered with skeletons of those who once believed they had mastered the game. And as the planet changes again, warming, shifting, rewriting its own rules, the question hangs in the air like volcanic smoke. Are we another masterpiece, destined for extinction, or the first to learn from all the dead ends before us? Because in the long, ruthless story of Earth, even the mightiest can vanish overnight. And the only thing evolution has ever promised is that it will keep trying, again and again, until even our bones become part of the next experiment.